All right, we are back at the NWTF with one very special guest, Dr. Duck himself, on this podcast, and we are very excited to have you. Now, this gentleman here kills the ducks on the public land and hunts them really hard, and I have a lot of respect for you.
No, man, thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction and everything. And it's good to be here with you guys to share some time with you.
Yes, sir. We appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and talk about ducks.
It's one of my favorite things to do. You know, if I'm not hunting them, I love talking about them. So.
Same here. Yeah. We love the ducks around here, and you know, this season was a little bit different because of the water levels, especially in the state of Arkansas.
Right.
Now, I don't know if y'all had that same problem in Texas like we did, but there was a point where the Cache River was so low, there was a small island forming in the middle of it, which was just the bottom of the river.
Right. You know, we had the same problem too in Arkansas. The water was low, but also Oklahoma and Texas. It was just one of those years that we just didn't have the water, so it made it very, very difficult for us for sure. But we came out, we did okay. I just called the group of guys with us. We called us the Dallas Cowboys. You know, we'd go out, we'd have a good hunt, then it'd take us a little while to get back on another one, but. We just didn't show up every day. We did show up every day. It didn't work out for us. But water had a big, I think, a big part of that. Even though Arkansas did have some flooded trees, it just seems like the ducks didn't want to use those trees as much as when the water is up and out on the rivers.
You know, and that's one thing that I looked at too early on before season even started. I noticed that there were several WMAs that weren't even getting pumped up this year, and I think that has a lot to do with the water table being so low that, you know, it couldn't keep up, and you can't pump out of the river because there's nothing there to pump out of.
Right.
You know, and I really think that made duck season extremely difficult unless you were on private land that you could turn a pump on and leave it running all season.
Right. I think sometimes I think we can do a better job of management. You know, on our and just like a private land guy, just like you mentioned, he's going to keep it at that level. I just think, you know, the state should be or the federal, whoever's over it, should just, you know, manage it just like anybody else would. They treat it like their own, but they don't. It's hard to get, anytime government's involved in anything, it doesn't pan out in our favor at all, in my opinion.
Do they just do nothing?
Well,
more than
I can tell you this, in Texas, my son went to a WMA to hunt, right? Okay. And it was a draw-only place, but it's pretty good duck hunting there. Well, this year they didn't even have it pumped up. So when he showed up for the draw and he went to that location, the game warden walked out and says, hey, we don't even have water this year.
Oh, wow.
You know, it's just a perfect example. A private land guy is going to have that water in there. Yeah. You know, the management, we just need to ask more out of our government to do a better job of management on public ground, just like, you know, a private ground guy would do, in my opinion. It makes it tough on us because it's anytime you go out and you try to schedule time to go out and say you wanted to come to Texas and you used to go hunt in that area where you spend 4 or 5 hours traveling and you get there and there's no water and you're dependent on that water to be there. So I think management, to me, on public ground just needs to be as good, if not better, than a private land guy does.
You know, I agree with that 100%. And one thing that I've noticed in the state of Tennessee, for deer, turkey, ducks, all of it, is, you know, the state doesn't do a really good job of planting the food plots, planting those food sources, because there's a lot of these WMAs that have the fields, and yes, they may have the smart weed and stuff like that, but I do feel like we could put more effort into planting the millet, the brown top millet, the Japanese, all of it, to where these ducks can have not only the refuge to go to, but they can have the food in the public hunting grounds.
Right.
To stay and to know that, hey, it's imprinted. You know, they know to come back every single year to that specific area because our states are putting the time in, just like you're talking about with the water, to make sure it's flooded. Well, make sure there's food for the ducks there too.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And then, you know, what we hear though is just we don't have the budget for it. And if you take the state of Texas, which I love my home state, I mean, Texas, red, white, and blue.
Oh, yeah.
But to tell me that the state of Texas doesn't have a budget for waterfowl, that's insane. When you know we're probably one of the richest states in the union to begin with. Heck, when our economy is bigger than most
Other
countries.
Yeah.
Other countries.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I had a little.
Oh,
but
you're good.
you know, I shake my head. And there again, the funding is there for. It seems like other sports, but when it comes to waterfowl, we just fall really short. And I just think a lot of that sometimes it's not really the budget. I think it's just laziness. They just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
I think these states need to really, pour into it, because I've noticed a lot of people are getting upset and are turning away from duck hunting because the ground's just not good and they're not killing ducks and they don't enjoy it.
Right. Well, I think another of that is, a lot of people get into the industry, and then a lot of our biologists and stuff, and they're over these areas of working, and some of them do a really good job, but some of them I just think it's a paycheck for them, and they're the passion of farming for ducks, basically what we're talking about, is not on their top agenda, because it does take a lot of work. If you go to a private land guy, he's starting right now for this season. You know what I mean? He's got the water drained off. He's got it probably tilled. He's probably waiting to make sure we're not going to get another frost in, and he's going to put the seed in the ground. Where right now, if you went a month or 2 months from now, you go to a state project, it still look the same.
Exactly.
So I think the debate right now between having flooded corn and all of that, I think if the states would just pick up the wand and run with it, and start doing a better job of producing habitat for the refuges that we have access to, I think a lot of that would fix itself.
I was going to ask you about the flooded corn thing. As someone who doesn't really keep a pulse on the waterfowl world as myself, what is going on there? And then what's your take on this whole flooded corn, the hot corn fields, private land, having all the food? What's your kind of take on that, and what is kind of really going on in that world with this whole debate happening with the corn?
Well, if you're talking about the mallard duck, in my opinion, of course, being from Texas is about as far south as you can get. The mallard duck is just not. It's not what it was 5 years ago, and so it keeps going down and down the numbers as far as the mallards go. But when you look at the count overall, Texas holds a lot of ducks. But when it comes to mallards, I don't believe it holds what it used to hold. But to me, again, back to where our states would be more responsible, like our private land guys, and do their job, I don't think we would be having this debate right now. So I have seen where flooded corn does hold ducks. I've hunted it, so I know what it's like. But I also seen flooded corn where there was not a kernel left on the cob, and it still held ducks. And why? Because the flooded corn also creates habitat for those ducks to get in there and rest, where they can conserve energy. It takes them out of the wind, the elements. It keeps them away from predators when it's deep enough. You don't have the foxes and the coyotes chasing them. It gives them cover from the owls and the hawks and the eagles that we see all the time chasing them. So it creates a safe habitat for them. So it's not only a food source, it's a resting area. And then, also, I think also I've seen it too where flooded corn, if you put too much pressure on it hunting, it turns into a roost instead of a hunting property. Mm-hmm. So the deal is I think the fix it all is you start creating habitat down the flyway, because you got to have the weather to push them anyways. And I tell guys, and you can go back to the first podcast I ever did years ago, 8-9 years ago. It's not necessarily when it comes to the mallard duck is the freeze line, it's the snow line. I think if you got the freeze combination with the snow, I think. Thank you. You got that combination. That's going to, push that migration a little bit further down the line. But also when you got a great food source, and like you said earlier, when it's imprinted, maybe it doesn't take that much. They know that food's there. Maybe they want to move a little bit quicker and a little bit, sooner. So I think creating that habitat will also bring the flyway back. But we got to have our states to start pitching in and stop the frustration, because the last thing I want to see is the public land guy argue with the private land guy. Yes. And that's what they want. They want us to be divided. We need to come together, find out resolutions that's good for both sides. But the private land guy right now is not doing himself any justice by posting thousands of ducks and then pile picks with 10 or 15 guys out there, and then your brothers over here on public ground are struggling to even see a duck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we just kind of I'm not saying being sensitive or anything like that. It doesn't bother me. I'm proud for those guys. But a lot of young guys, I think it's coming into our industry, doesn't quite fully understand yet, but they're learning.
Yeah.
And I think education will fix a lot of the conflict as well. So I know we got a lot of guys doing a lot of research, but you know, your eyes doesn't lie to you. So what you see and what happens and what you see what happens and what you see when you hunt versus what somebody else does, and especially if you're one of those guys that goes north and you see all that, then you come down south and all you're watching is the sunrise every morning. It's pretty difficult because I've been there and I'm still there. And to be my age and to be out there, I still enjoy it. So that's my main priority. And then also the question that we have to ask as hunters: how many ducks do you have to kill to be satisfied?
That is a great question.
So
I think that's in any facet of the hunting world.
Yeah.
You know, how many deer or turkey does it take? How many ducks need to be on your strap for you to be happy?
I think a lot of our young guys, and the problem is too, they have this false indication of like, I should be getting limits every day. You know, you have to be honest. Even your private land guys are not doing that.
No.
Even though they show a lot of ducks and stuff, but you know, showing them and killing them is two different things. So you have to realize, how many ducks does it really take? Do you need to shoot limits every day to make you satisfied? And you know, to me, that's just it shouldn't be that way. You know, we got to get back to where it's the experience, and whatever that experience is for you. And of course, killing is a bonus. And yes, you need to go out and you need to have success. But also, I think to really enjoy it, you got to go through the hard times, because it really makes you respect the good times, and it makes that, you know, you want to recreate that over and over. And it puts that drive in you to get out there and put that work in. And that's part of it. I don't want to become lazy where I don't have to work for it anymore. I'm fixing to be 57 this month. And I'm telling you, I don't want to just show up and shoot. I want a good hunt. I don't want to shoot. I want a good hunt. So
what's the biggest changes from when you started duck hunting versus today?
I tell you, to me, not really much at all. And I look back over the years at the boat ramps, and everybody says it's more crowded now. And I'm going to be honest with you. The boat ramps are not more crowded than they were 17 years ago, 25 years ago. The only thing that's changed, and I haven't figured that out, is somehow these faces stay younger, and mine keeps getting older. That's the only thing. The number of people has been there. A lot of young men that's coming in, it's 18, 19, 20-something years old. They're in college, and then those guys start falling off after they get married, and then especially after they have their first kid. It's really hard for those guys to get out because they got work, they got responsibility to take care of their family, which they should, and it's really hard for those guys to get out, especially when those kids start sports. And that's the thing too, our industry has to realize we're in competition with everybody else in sports, because, you know, the state of Texas, you know, baseball is year-round. Soccer's really kicked off.
And football's a national gym there.
Yeah, and now you got basketball year round. So you know, I raised two boys. So a lot of times with me, just looking, hey, you want to go hunt with Dad, or you want to go play a baseball tournament? They're going to choose being in a dugout with their friends all weekend instead of hunting with their dad sometimes. And that's just the way it is. But we have to realize that, and you know, and I think for as far as the change, I really hadn't seen a big change. I know everybody, anytime you got a lot of ducks in the area, you're going to have a lot of duck hunters. That's just bottom line. So if you go there and you expect, I have low expectations when I see 80 boats at the boat ramp. When you go in there with high expectations, you're setting yourself up for a heartbreak.
Yes, you are.
So,
Makes sense.
Yeah. So go in there with low expectations. Hey, if it works out for you, it makes it even better. But when it doesn't work out for you, the odds are against you. You know what I mean? It's kind of like winning the lottery a little bit. So if you go in there and have that mindset, you'll last a lot longer in duck hunting, because anytime you focus on the numbers, you're going to get frustrated and you're going to quit.
Oh yeah, that's true. And you know, a lot of people don't understand too about the scout. You know, you can't just roll into a place and be like, oh cool, there's a hole, we're going to sit right there.
Right.
That in itself can be the difference in killing 4 or 5 ducks or killing a limit if that's what you want to do.
Right.
You have to spend the time scouting and doing it correctly.
Right.
To know these places. And if you're from out of state and you're going to another state, you need to go and run that water.
Right.
Because if you have never ran that water before and you're going in there blind in a boat, there's a great chance that you could hit something
Right.
that you didn't know was there.
Right, for sure. Or if you can even get to it, you might see the water over there, but it might be 4 inches deep.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so it's always good to try to get in there and do your pre-scouting as much as you can. But I also want to emphasize, too, try to do it without disturbing the birds as much as possible. If you do see a bunch of birds, and my son, perfect example this year, he did exactly what I taught him. He went into an area that we've hunted maybe once or twice, but we didn't hunt this part of that area, but we've been in this place before. Well, there were a lot of ducks sitting in here. They rafted up in there. There was really, really a lot of them. He was so excited. He called me and said, "Dad, we're going to get them in the morning." When we show up, it was too deep. But I always told him, I said, if you see a lot of ducks, stay on the outside, let them sit there as long as possible. And, of course, they sit there in the dark, and he just backed out because he didn't want to run them out. So, but when we got there that morning, we had to shift locations because it was just too deep for us to stand. And that's going to happen. Yeah. But running in there and taking the boat, because if you run the boat in there, the guy behind you runs in the boat. Every time you run them out of there, you got less ducks return because you're disturbing them. So just be real careful with that. I like to get my boat to a point. I do a lot of walking when I scout, so I don't disturb those birds, and they can sit in there and rest as long as possible. And I think that also creates a better chance for successful hunts.
I do too, and I tell people all the time, use a set of binoculars.
Yep.
Stay 500 yards away from them and just watch them with binoculars or spot and scope, whatever you can.
Yep.
Back to your point, running in there, running them with a boat, side by side, whatever. The more times you run through there, the less likely they're going to be to return the next morning.
That's right. A lot of guys go out and scout, and they find a lot of ducks. They run them out so many times, they go sit up the next morning. Well, they didn't come back. Mm-hmm. Well, that happens a lot. So, if you take that private land guy, they let them rest. That's the thing about having private land. You can manage it. And, of course, on public ground, you can't manage like they do. So the only time you have that element of surprise when it comes to duck hunting is that opening morning. So that's it. After that, it's grind on, because if you're not in that hole, somebody else is. Where a private land guy, he can recreate that. He can let it rest for a week, 2 weeks when he sees the numbers in there. But if you can find that spot and you can sit there and let that thing rest as much as possible and then go in there that next morning, you'll have a better opportunity.
That's probably your biggest tip is for folks, is that like kind of less is more, it sounds like?
To me, when it comes to scouting, there's several things I like to look at. Of course, location. But I tell guys all the time is being prepared is the most important thing. And it's like he said, having a good pair of binoculars. I got a pair on my truck. I got a pair on my boat. Mm-hmm. So I'll sit there. So I know how many hunters I'm hunting with. I know the wind direction might be the north when I'm scouting, but tomorrow might be the south. So I want to know the wind direction of when I'm hunting. So with all these apps, you can do that now. You can sit there, and then I can look and I can see, okay, I can hide 5 guys right here. We're going to sit up here. So it's a lot easier doing that kind of stuff in the daylight than it is at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning when it's dark, and trying to figure stuff out. And then another thing I'm looking for is the flight pattern from them. How comfortable are they? Are they circling live decoys 10 times before they go in land, or are they just dive bombing? Mm-hmm. So that has a lot to do with how I'm going to duck call, how I'm going to set up my decoys. If they're dive bombing, we're not probably going to call. And we're going to set up our decoys, and we're going to spread a little bit because they're confident they're coming in. If they're circling around 10 times over live ducks, you can only imagine what they're going to do when plastic decoys get there.
That's exactly.
So to me, concealment is probably going to be the main key that I'm looking at. And we're going to call as very subtle as possible, just keep their attention, and hopefully our decoys does the rest of the work for us. So
awesome.
Those are the main things that I look for when you're scouting. Everybody just looks at the numbers. Take a little bit more time and see how those ducks are really acting. Mm-hmm. So it'll help you out a lot when you're setting up.
Yeah, and talking about scouting too it's different for every type of situation that you hunt.
Right.
Because I grew up hunting Lake Guntersville in Alabama. Mm-hmm. That's just big open water.
Right.
So I would take my boat, I would sit in the middle of the channel, and I would watch the back of the coves. And when I found what I was looking for, I would ease up just a little bit to where I could see exactly where they were sitting.
Yeah.
I still stayed 500 yards or more away from them.
Right.
To where I could, drop a pin on the map and be like, okay, we can sit right here, or we can sit on the shell bed out in front of that island and really hurt the divers because they're going to feed at that shell bed.
Right. And I tell you too, a lot of times too, and I've hunted less, I've scouted different areas, and I might find more ducks in this area than I did this area, but where it had more ducks, it might be a bluebird day that day I scouted it, but the cover was terrible. But the next morning would be a cloudy day. But this place over here had less ducks, but the cover was better. I'm going to take the better cover on a cloudy day than the more ducks over here.
It seems like the hide is
the hide.
number one.
Yeah, because you don't have the shadows, and those ducks, they can see just like a turkey can. They can pick you out.
Yes,
Especially when you start duck calling, they're going to look and try to find out where that call is.
Right,
And if you don't have that cover there, and people wonder why they can't shoot them. They was in here, and there was a lot of ducks, but we couldn't get them to finish. Well, that's because they seen something. And a mallard duck, when it gets to Texas, it's got that Ivy League education, right?
Absolutely.
He's got that Ivy League education. So he's trying to figure out what's wrong. If he sees that one little thing that makes him lose confidence, he ain't coming in. And he'll sit there and circle. But then again, what happens, and a lot of times, is he'll sit there and circle until he gets a big wad of them, and then he takes the whole flock with him, So to me, I look for cover. Depending on the weather, like I said, cloudy day versus sunny day, I look at everything from head to toe, so it just where it puts the ball in my court instead of their court.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Another thing I kind of want to ask is, everybody talks about motion in their decoys.
Mm-hmm.
How much is too much with all these, like you have a jerk rig and then like a mojo spinner thing, and to me, it almost seems like duck hunters at times can put out too many flashy things. Is there too much? Is that a thing?
Well, I think what I do and what I try to talk about is do what you feel confident in.
Okay.
Any gear, any product that you feel confident in, you put it out that way. So, sometimes we'll break out the club, and sometimes we don't. It depends, again, on how the scouting report is. If they're shy, sometimes I try to give them less to look at. If they're real confident, I want to keep that confidence up. Safety in numbers is what they're looking for. So we put a bigger spread out. The mojos and stuff, I just, it depends how educated they are. Like I said, when I get to Texas, over water, the mojos are pretty educated. The motion for me, too, is a big key. Jerk string and stuff like that to keep the ripples in the water at full time as much as possible.
Same like a japu?
Yeah, like a japu for sure. They do a great job mixed in with a jerk string because that looks realistic. It looks like ducks are moving. You got butts popping up and they're feeding really well. Anytime you got still water and you got a mojo in it and you have no motion at all and they want to know why it flares, a lot of times when those ducks get over there and they come down on it and they see and they flare up, I think a lot of times they see that reflection in the water too. If you see that reflection in the water in that mojo, sometimes that's just a dead signal giving it away. They get in within that 50-yard mark and they see that and they flare up because that water's just like glass. So it's just not natural, right? So ripples in the water, motion like that, to me is really good. And you just got to control the spinning wings and just put out what you feel is more comfortable. And a lot of times we'll hide that mojo in some buck brush, just to break it up just a little bit. So there's little things that you can try and do, but we always put it out, and then sometimes, we feel like, hey, that might be doing it, we'll pull it in. You can always take it out.
Yes, you can. Or you can always turn it off.
You always turn it off.
They
got those fancy things, remotes now, so they can turn off and on, so it helps a lot.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so when it comes to shotguns, what is your favorite gauge to shoot?
Well, I used to be years ago I was 12 gauge candlesticks, those 3.5. But technology has came a long ways, and thank God for that.
No
But no, I like the last couple of years I've been shooting a 20 gauge 3-inch, and man, I haven't been disappointed. Just you go out and you do the testing in the fields with them, and you get your patterns down where you feel a lot of confidence. And so to me, the 20 gauge. The last 2 or 3 years, because you got the same knockdown, you got the same feet per second. Between the 12 gauge and the 20 gauge, you lose about 30 BBs, and that's about it. So, especially in the trees, the 20 gauge works great. I think sometimes now with the technology out, I think you can almost go to a 410 in the trees.
Well, Ben's got a story with a 410.
So I took my son last weekend for the youth hunt in Arkansas.
Awesome.
And he got to kill his first 2 ducks ever at 4 years old.
Awesome.
He killed a mallard drake and a green-winged teal, and it was a single shot 410 with TSS, and I left the turkey choke in it.
Yeah, I tell you, we're looking at it. I mean, it's the technology. Now, 10 years ago, you try to shoot steel out of a 20 gauge, man, all you do is you might knock a few feathers off here and there, but that's about it. You know, you ended up with a lot more wounded ducks when that first came out. You really did. Now it's not so much. I think, you know, like I said, the technology's come a long ways. The knockdown is a lot better than what it used to be. So 20 gauge is for me.
Yeah, same here. I shoot a 20 gauge, and I just started shooting the 20 gauge this year because my buddy was like, man, I don't know why you toting around that heavy 12 gauge all the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I guess I'll give it a shot. Yeah. And I put one of them chokes in it and started shooting it, and I couldn't tell a difference.
And I tell you, too, the 28 gauge might not be a bad option. I might be looking at that pretty soon if you know. Because I feel like I got the confidence in the shells now. That's all I needed, and that's the reason I was hunting with the candlesticks. So I just didn't have the confidence in what we were shooting. But Migra for us has done a great job, which all of them do a great job. But Migra's been one of our favorite shells or go-to shells for us. And I tell you, I've been shooting it now for the last 3 years, and I haven't been disappointed at all.
So what's your favorite size? Shot?
3 inch, and you know we shoot that's the thing about Migra. They got the different combinations. So
right.
I think they got the 4s and the 6s and the 5. So the 4s and 6s has been really well for us. So you know, so I think it really, if you pattern out in the field before you go duck hunting, I think you'll be pretty impressed with it.
You know, and I tell people that all the time, even with turkey hunting, duck hunting, whatever. It's just like deer hunting a rifle. Go pattern your shotgun. Yeah. And know exactly what it's doing.
It's so important.
So you can make your adjustments or whatever, because some shotguns, you have to shim them. So they fit you right. Some of them, you get them right out of the box and they fit you perfect. So you got to know where you're shooting before you go into the woods, because I think that's where a lot of discouragement comes from. Right. You know, is they don't know what their pattern is, or is my gun a little higher, is it a little low, or right, left, whatever it may be, and they're like, well, I don't hit anything.
I think anytime you change your shells, your choke, or your gun, you should go out and get familiar with it. And it's a lot easier shooting at a target in a controlled environment than it is standing over water trying to do it. So and trying to figure it out. So
I would definitely go trap shooting. I've noticed that's helped me a lot. Clays, you know, skeet trap, whatever. Something to somewhat imitate the flying.
Yeah, for sure.
Helps a lot.
For sure.
It does. You know, it's a lot different because when you're actually shooting at ducks, your adrenaline's pumping, you're excited. You know, and I've done it before. A big old wad of teal come in, and I'm just boom, 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 boom. I didn't hit nothing.
Well, shooting that skeet, it creates that muscle memory. So when you do, when it does go live, that muscle memory takes over and lets you follow through and shoot. Right. So we used to do a lot of that as well. Yeah. But you know, just getting out there shooting skeet and targets, I think the more time you spend with your gun, it's just like playing golf or anything other sport. Right. I mean, the more you do it, the more confident you are, the better opportunities you're going to have.
Right, and one thing you just mentioned is the follow-through, and that is one of the most crucial points of shooting a flying bird is the follow-through. You don't just get to it, pull the trigger, and stop. You keep going. Yeah. And that is the difference.
It's like a paintbrush. That's how I was always taught.
Yeah.
Just shoot.
And that can be the difference between killing the duck and wounding it or straight missing it.
Yeah, or miss, yeah.
Absolutely, because I hate chasing cripples.
I do too, especially in water, knee-deep water.
Yes.
And you know, and then when you got a cripple, when your dog's swimming, you're not getting that duck.
No.
And, you know, that duck's with those 2 little feet's going to outswim a 4-legged dog any day and all day. So,
they are.
And you know, so that's the thing too. We like them in close, so if they do pop that head up, we can put another shot in them really quick, because it ain't no fun chasing them.
Yeah, and you know, that's one thing I was going to bring up too. You're talking about locking them in close. I love nothing more than having ducks feet down in the decoys.
It's nothing better.
You know, people ask me all the time, like, why didn't we shoot that duck? Because he wasn't in the decoys.
Right.
You know, I want them to finish, because what you have to realize is we're trying to give ourselves the best shot opportunity so we can effectively kill these ducks and not wound a bunch of them and then have to go and chase them or not get them, because we want to retrieve those ducks. That's the point. We want to get them.
Well, 2 things. I like them down there because it's a quicker retrieve. You're back and you're set up. You're ready to go hunting again. But when you got one guy out there chasing a wounded bird and you got your other buddies trying to, you know, continue to hunt, and you're sitting here maybe with a dog whistle telling your dog over, back, or you shooting, chasing it, running through the water, shooting. So you mess up more than you achieve. So So to me, getting them in close enough, you know, when you get a group in, sometimes you do have a couple of cripples that pop up. That's just nature of the beast.
Oh, it is.
But having them right there on the water, right in front of you, where you put another quick shot in them, and then everybody, so like we'll send our dog after one. If we get 3 or 4, we want to get there quick. So we got a couple guys going out there to get the other 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I don't want the dog running 3 or 4 times to get ducks. I want those ducks in, everybody strapped back down and hidden. We're waiting on the next volley. So you're right. I want them in close. And I'm telling you, I'm a water SWAT guy. To me, if you fool a duck from Texas all the way down into your decoys, you did your job.
That
is the more, you know, I had a lot of guys back in the day tell me that's not giving it a sporting chance. It had a sporting chance to fly out. You land a duck in plastic decoys, you've done something, especially to an Ivy League duck.
Absolutely. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No,
No, because these ducks have seen everything. Every decoy
starting from Canada.
Everything. By the time they get to us,
they've seen it all. And not to mention, it's public ground, so that hole's probably been hunted every day.
Right.
So it's not like it's not educated.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you guys were mentioning flyways earlier. Again, as a not someone who's always in the waterfowl space, all I keep hearing is the flyways are moving. How true is that? Is it true?
I do think it's true, but there's a couple things going back. I think food creates that change.
Okay.
And I also think hunting pressure makes that change. I think the combination of two, ducks are going to look for safety, they're going to look for food. And so anytime you have that, ducks are not stupid. And they're very smart bird. And so I think a lot of that does change, and to those deals there a lot, those 2 categories, food and safety.
Well, you know, going back to the food, I know that with the technological advances we have now in the harvesters, they don't drop anything. There's nothing left when they leave that field. There's no food for these ducks in those big rice paddies.
Right.
Because the technology is so advanced, these machines run so efficiently that there's not any left over.
Right.
You know, and that used to be one of the big things, that these older machines would drop a little bit here and there.
Right.
But it was just enough to give the ducks something to eat throughout the season.
Right.
And now there's just a slick field.
Yeah, my suggestion on that is if you are a guy and you are leasing a field, is to maybe communicate with your farmer. Maybe he'll leave you a little bit there, and you know, creates more opportunities for you. A lot of times when those guys are swapping it clean, they're not going to flood it anyways. So if you're leasing, or if you're a farmer, which the farmers are they're going to do it. They're going to leave some out there for the ducks. So I know a lot of biologists talk about that, but also I've seen some fields with a lot of rice in it on purpose, strictly for waterfowl. So I think, you know, that philosophy, I agree with it. It is cleaner, but when it's clean, they're not going to flood it for the ducks anyways.
That's very true.
Yeah,
that's very true. Yep, that's a good point.
So to us, we finally leased the field. We talked with our farmer. He's working with us, and he's going to, you know, help us out a little bit. He's not just going to go in there. He can, but he knows, you know, we're going to lease it for waterfowl. So in return, he's going to help us out. Yeah. So this to me is just communication. If you're a farmer or he is swapping it clean, you just need to communicate with him. Say, hey, you know, can you help it out a little bit? Leave a little habitat for us, you know. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I think that contributes though to the flyway shifting.
Yeah.
Because less fields are getting flooded.
Yep.
Because, you know, a lot of farmers don't lease their fields.
I tell you, in the state of Arkansas, from where we're at, where we hunt a lot at, man, a lot of fields were already turned over, flattened, and ready for reseeding already. And you used to not see that.
Right.
Now you're seeing it more and more. And I know OnX made a post about it, guys in Mississippi, that, you know, they're doing the same thing down there. It's less and less habitat. To me, that's where our government should reach out to some of these farmers and pay them to flood their fields. Like I know DU does contracts with some of the farmers.
Yes.
I think some of our government agencies ought to kick in too and start leaving fields there and do flooded rice, so we can create that habitat to keep them coming back. Because when you're cleaning the fields like that, it does there again, it affects the migration, and they don't come as far south. So a lot of that habitat needs to be left for the ducks, and I think leasing the fields is. I think a lot of farmers would go for it.
Well, I do too, and when you do something like that, it's only going to help the public land.
Yeah.
Because those ducks are going to be close by.
Right.
And they're still going to fly into that public land to eat acorns if
Yep.
you're in the timber.
Right.
Or wherever you're at. They may come in and eat the native grass seeds that are in there.
Yep.
Whatever it may be a morsel unit.
Right.
There may be a bunch of invertebrates in there that the mallards can eat.
Right.
There's a lot of different food sources for the ducks, but if the flyway is shifting because of agricultural practices, then you're going to have less opportunity to hold ducks in an area that can bounce back and forth from the public land to a privately held farm that's not even necessarily hunted,
Right.
but it's just farm.
That's right. And I just think we just got to get smarter about our farming, and I think our government needs to do their job and step in and start creating these, go knock on some doors. Hey, can you leave 200 or 300 acres flooded for? And the farmer, he don't have to let anybody hunt it. Just hey, leave it flooded,
Yeah.
And then also, I know DU does a great job too. Is they help the state of Arkansas. You can actually put in draws for these flooded fields now. I just think, and they pay the farmer to flood it, and then they put it up. You could put in for a draw, and it'd be your blind Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I think we need more programs like that because it does create habitat. It gives the ducks time, a place to go, like you said, to feed, and it creates more of a habitat for those ducks to keep returning year on year, and it also creates more opportunity for the public land to get in there and have a nice relaxed weekend every once in a while.
It does, and with it only being able to be hunted like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it gives the first part of the week for those ducks to rest in there.
Yeah.
And get comfortable in there instead of being blown out every single day.
Yeah, I just think programs like that, I think they need guys that's in our waterfowl world to come and sit down with them, give them ideas. Most farmers probably wouldn't. Look, if you pay them and leased it, it's not that big of a deal. They can get the water off. They can still get the replant it for rice or beans or whatever they're going to do for that spring. It's not going to put them back that far behind, especially if they're making a little bit of money off of it. In return, they're really helping us with the duck hunting.
Yeah.
I just think programs like that would be very smart. I think it also will create or cool down this conflict that we're having between us right now. And I know sometimes they do have programs like that. I think they need to do a better job of communicating with our industry about getting that knowledge out to our younger guys and give them those opportunities, so it will help them reach out and maybe go and do that every once in a while.
Yeah.
And then it takes the pressure down off the public land too.
Yeah, it does.
Because the problem right now is to get access to land right now, and our younger guys, and I'm talking about our college kids, our high school kids, it's really hard for them to get access. And when they do get access, and they do maybe have this property they want, they don't have the money to get it leased. It's so expensive.
It is.
It's gotten, duck hunting is turning into a rich man's sport.
It
It really is. You take
It
a
is.
$30,000 duck boat, basically,
Yeah.
and your decoys, and time you buy your shotgun, time you buy your waders, you start adding the numbers up, and it's insane on what it would cost our young women and men to get out there and do it. But I think if our government would help us and use some of that funding that they tax us on, right, and start doing these programs and let us spread out and start creating this lease land would be a tremendous help.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You said it best right there. I could not agree with that more. And the goal is to keep the birds in our flyway, make sure they have the habitat they need, so they can not only thrive, but they can survive all the way up through the migration, south and north.
South and north, but there again, I think food and comfort is the way they're trying to find that safe zone, and wherever they find it at, that's where they're going to go.
Yep.
But you think, I mean, Oklahoma is usually a good state, but this year is it didn't have a lot of water, so they didn't have a lot of ducks. Yeah. So they shifted somewhere. So I think each year that can determine where they go.
Yeah, I definitely think that the water level in that state, whether it be the Mississippi River, the Cache River, the White River, whatever it is, that's going to determine a lot of what ducks stay and what ducks fly over and go to the next state.
And another thing too, a lot of guys got to realize, a lot of young guys, they down south, hunting season goes towards the end of January.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, the Dakotas end about the first weekend of December. If you don't have the snow to push them down here and get them out of the fields, they're not going to leave that food source. And now they don't have any hunting pressure. So now they got food, they got water, because they're going to find a running stream or running river somewhere, and they'll fly to those fields and feed. They have no reason to come down here at all. Why would you come south to get shot?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they have no hunting pressure left. They got plenty of food. They got plenty of water. So why leave? I think that's a lot of problems with our migration. So I've been telling for the last 10 years, we've got to have the snow to cover up those fields in the Dakotas to get a good push. And of course, we did this year a little bit, but it was a little late. Yeah. But maybe next year come a little early. We can't control the weather. We can't expect anybody, our agencies or anybody to control the weather. It is what it is.
It's Mother Nature.
It's Mother Nature. And I do agree around the 31st, because everybody knows if you duck hunted for a while, a lot of our birds are paired up come the end of January. Yes, they are. I mean, I've shot drakes, and that hen would just circle and circle, and she's just quacking. She's looking for her man, And I'm just like, we could easily shoot the hen, but we don't. Yeah. I'm just like, you're just going to have to go find another boyfriend. Yeah. But, and they do, but still, they are paired up pretty hard. So I'm on the biologist side about that. I know a lot of guys want to go into February, which we do now with the military and the youth hunts, which I'm not opposed to that. Right. I think special hunt or special things like that should be considered and continue to be considered. But overall, I'm a guy that's probably around that 31st should be about it.
I agree with you 100%.
Because we got to have something for the next year, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
we do. We do, absolutely.
Well, hey, listen, before we wrap this up, I know you're Dr. Duck, but we are at the Turkey Federation show.
Yes, sir.
Do you got any plans for turkey hunting coming up?
Yeah, we're going to, me and Hunter and I, we hunted together the last few years. Like I said, my boys was in sports, perfect example of a guy who hadn't got out and turkey hunted a lot, but for the last 2 or 3 years, I got an empty nest now. Both boys are out of the house and gone, got jobs, and one's married, and I think the other one's getting ready to propose, so I got more time to travel. Yeah, so definitely getting out, and definitely I know I'm going to Oklahoma for sure. Definitely going to do Texas. I'm probably going to do Arkansas maybe with Hunter, and then also we've got an invite to Wisconsin and Michigan. So we might do that as well. So looking forward to that.
Well, I was going to say we have a really nice place just down the road here.
I'd love to come to Tennessee.
Come on,
well, come on, brother.
I've done a little research, and Tennessee has the most birds in any state. And I was shocked because I figured Texas would be right there with you, but apparently
just come
we're
see
not.
it for yourself, man.
Yeah, I will.
We'd love to have you.
Well,
Yes,
we
sir.
strictly manage our farm down there for turkey and whitetail. So come on anytime.
Awesome,
Seriously.
man. Thank you guys. And I appreciate you guys having me on. It's a true honor to spend some time with you guys and here at NWTF, and been coming up here the last couple of years, and it's exciting to be here.
Yes,
I love it, and it is jam-packed in here.
It is jam-packed, and hey, it's conservation at its best right here today. Yes. So, this neat. Waterfowl's the same way. DU has a good banquet. Delta Waterfowl has one as well. If you're listening, be sure you come visit those. Spend a little money at those conventions as well.
So absolutely. Right. Well, how can all the listeners find you?
Man, they can. Most people follow me on Instagram. It's at Dr. Duck Dr_Duck. And we got a website, and of course we're on Facebook as well. And the other ones I'm on there, but I'm not very active on TikTok, to be honest with you. It's just every time I post something, they make me take it down. So I'm not very active on that. But anyways, but those are the main things. And of course our YouTube channel too as well. We got videos that comes up there, and so. And the guys who watch and follow, thank you so much. I appreciate it from the top and the bottom of my heart. It really means the world to me for the support you guys give me.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to be on here and talking with us today, and it just means a lot to us that you would sit down with us.
Yeah,
man, absolutely. I appreciate the invite. It means more to me that you invited me than me being here. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
All right, well.
With that, the redneck is out.
See you guys.